changed his schedule to come on the show. Huge fan of Lee Elberson. He was scheduled yesterday. As you guys know, we had some technical difficulties. We'll leave it at that.
But it's happening today.
Well, we're good.
We're in it.
Yeah, we're good. We encourage the viewers and listeners to join us in the discussion as we talk important topics and solutions.
There we go. I love that. Yeah.
Solutions.
No dumb questions on the I Love CVille show, right? Post any questions you have in the chat, right?
There are no dumb questions, right?
No, I don't think so.
Do you believe that?
100%.
Yeah.
I'm an educator. Of course I believe that.
I know you. You've never heard a dumb question ever?
Nope. I've heard questions that maybe I wouldn't have asked if I would have been in that position.
You've heard some questions that are better than others.
Yeah.
Have you not?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Give guys the show a like and a share. I've had many people reach out to me about Lee Elberson's attire and his jacket, which I was hyping on yesterday's show. Legitimately got 4 viewers comment on what your clothing was and that they did not get to see it. So we will make sure that we...
I made sure to wear the same jacket today for that reason.
That's good. And it's a new jacket.
It is a new jacket.
And it's a new pocket square.
It's
a new shirt. You said it was a new shirt.
All right, you notice it's a whole new outfit, yeah.
And he manicured the beard.
I did do a little trimming on the beard.
You trimmed it up.
Yeah.
Looking sharp.
Yeah, this is my post-Iceland look, kind of got a little bit of that.
Is it electric shaver that you're using? Or are you just growing and then trimming?
I do a little bit of electric shaver right here, and then straight razor
on the
down
neck.
Here, yeah.
Because it's tough to have the control.
Yes.
Is that why?
Well, I also, when it gets too long, it just bothers me. I don't know how Judah does it. When it gets to about that length, it just starts
scratching.
Yeah.
Scott Aaronworth in Virginia Beach, the Esquire, is asking what your favorite restaurant is. That question's already come in the feed. Philip Dow is watching in Scottsville. Blake Hawthorne. Hey, Blake.
You got a chance to meet Blake. Blake was sitting right there.
I did.
Yeah.
I remember.
A few months ago.
Blake Hawthorne, California?
Yeah. Sacramento.
Sacramento. Sacktown in the house. Guys, give the show a like and a share. Lee is back. We're going to talk schools. We're going to talk grading equity.
Yep.
We're going to talk de-leveling. We're going to talk you watching Mr. Bill
Mooncachi. Mooncachi?
Mooncachi.
Mooncachi.
Mooncachi. Mooncachi. Mr. Bill.
Mr. Bill.
We love you, Mr. Bill.
Yep.
Give the show a like and a share. John Blair is watching. Hello, JB. We love you, JB. We'll get to the comment. We promise the viewers and listeners. We're also going to talk solutions today.
Yes.
On today's program. I think by now most have read the call to action that I penned on ilovecville.com, so I'm not going to read it again. I'll give a Cliff Notes version. That way we can just go straight into the tempo of things on today's show. Judah Wickhauer is our esteemed director. 10 years, right? 10 plus years. Brother from another mother.
10-year anniversary. Would you get him for your silver anniversary?
Is 10 years silver?
I don't know. I've only been married 2 years.
Yeah, my wife is watching. How long have we been married? I better get this right.
Oh.
We've been married 5+ years.
Okay.
5+.
That's good.
5+. Number 2 on the way for us
Congrats
through Thanksgiving.
For that.
Thank you. All right, Judah, we're looking good over here. In like Flynn, we're ready to rock and roll when you are, Judah Wickhauer. Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us. It's a pleasure to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille network, where the program airs on every social media platform absolutely known to mankind. This show is interactive and dynamic, where you, the viewer and listener, can join us for discussion with questions, comments, perspectives, concerns, and shape the discussion of the show. It's long-form content. There are no commercial breaks. We go well over an hour without stopping. No one else is delivering content like this on a day-to-day basis. I think maybe in the Commonwealth of Virginia, with the schedule, with the timeline, with an opportunity for you to plan your day around what we're doing. We're going to get to a lot of topics on today's show, topics that hit close to home. I want to relay a valuable comment from an individual we've dubbed the King of Knowledge, and John Blair. I respect him tremendously. I believe he's watching this show.
King of Knowledge.
Yeah.
Great title.
We've created monikers. Let's go to the two-shot, if we could, and welcome Lee Elberson. Lee Elberson is a trusted confidant and friend, and he's on set today. He was on set yesterday. He changed his schedule to come back this afternoon. And I want everyone
moved some of those mountains.
He moved mountains. I want everyone to take a look at first Lee Elberson's attire. The man's flossing. I mean, should we get him standing up on a one shot so we can see the new jacket?
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is
embarrassing? Is it too embarrassing?
This is already way too embarrassing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give you props. You're looking sharp.
Appreciate it.
You're looking sharp. All right, so here's the nitty-gritty, guys. Obviously, the topic has been the hazing incident at Albemarle. You know what's going on now, so I don't have to recap what's happened. You've also seen the call to action that I wrote on iloveseville.com that has gone viral. I think as of this morning, it was a little over 84,000 unique IP addresses had seen it. When I woke up this morning, I checked the analytics. If you want to see the call to action, go to iloveseville.com to read it. John Blair, who's a friend of the program, who's an attorney, responded to that call to action on LinkedIn. He has given me his permission to relay this comment on the show. Thank you for that, JB. So I'm going to read the comment. This was what we were going to lead with yesterday. You have the email yesterday, email from yesterday, Judah, where the points from the Virginia Code that apply that we can review. If you could call that up, that would be great. On a three-shot, Judah Wickhauer is our enterprising director, and then we'll get Lee Elberson jumping in right after the code.
Definitely.
I'll read the comment, go to Judah, and then to Lee. So this is John Blair, who left the comment on my LinkedIn based on the call to action that I published for the Albemarle County School Board and Superintendent Dr. Haas. He says, Jerry, I have seen the video of the alleged incident. Any human being should be sickened by it if they have an ounce of compassion or empathy. I agree that a public statement should be issued emphasizing the school board as a zero-tolerance policy for this type of behavior in its athletic programs. Additionally, please take a look at Virginia Code Section 63.2-1509A16. All individuals associated with the Albemarle High School athletics program are mandated reporters. At a minimum, the school board should inform the public that an investigation is underway to determine if any mandated reporter had knowledge of this incident and did not immediately report it pursuant to law. Anyone with a sense of decency and compassion would do everything in their power to ensure that all steps are taken to avoid a future incident. We live in an age of hyperbole, but that video can be described as horrific. John, well written there. Well written there, John Blair. Judah Wickhauer on the three-shot. You have the Virginia Code that he referenced on screen. No one here is attorneys. Okay, we're just guys who read a lot and utilize common sense. Highlight the aspects of the code that you think need highlighting, please, Judah B. Wickhauer.
So the code in question is talking about the requirements involving injuries to children and how they should be reported and the penalty for failure to report. And so the relevant section on who should report is Part 5, which states that any teacher or other person employed in a public or private school, kindergarten, or child day program, as that term is defined somewhere else. And then what they should do is in D, any person required to file a report pursuant to this section who fails to do so as soon as possible, but not longer than 24 hours after having reason to suspect a reportable offense of child abuse or neglect, shall be fined not more than $500 for the first failure, and for any subsequent failures not less than $1,000. in cases evidencing acts of rape, sodomy, or object sexual penetration as defined in Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 18.2, a person who knowingly and intentionally fails to make the report required pursuant to this section shall be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. E. No person shall be required to make a report pursuant to this section if the person has actual knowledge that the same matter has already been reported to the local department or the department's toll-free child abuse and neglect hotline.
Thank you. Judah Wickower. We get Lee Elberson in the mix with an open-ended question or an opportunity to go in any direction he would like. The show is yours, Lee Elberson.
Yeah, as it turns out, that you don't have to be a lawyer to have read that section of the code. Most educators or anyone who's been in education has probably been through that part of the code because it's part of mandatory reporting training. Claiborne was part of a grant with the Department of Social Services a few years ago, and so we were a mandatory reporter and had much training from DSS officers on what to do. I think there's at least two facets to this I can see that we should try to separate. One is the legal reporting side, which is what we're talking about right now. Has the mandatory reporting policies been upheld? As far as I can see, if there's a police investigation, it's likely somebody at the school or one of the teachers reached out to DSS to report it. We don't know anything else, and so I'm not going to speculate on who involved reported because we don't have enough information. The second side, I think, is the PR side, and I think that's what the esteemed Mr. Blair is talking about, is why has the school system not released a statement? I 100% agree with them that I don't see any harm with just posting a statement saying the school has a zero tolerance policy. It's sort of a win-win. Even if nothing happens, it shows that they're taking it seriously. I would imagine that ACPS has a really large PR team, and hopefully they have some sort of strategy as to why they haven't released any data right now. But it's hard to believe that after this much public outcry, you've had dozens, hundreds of viewers reach out to you and say that they're concerned with this. So you would think that would warrant a response from ACPS, at least to let them know that something is happening. Yes, we've gone through mandatory reporting. There's an investigation underway. As is standard with these sort of investigations, we're not going to disclose any details until the investigation is complete. That seems pretty straightforward. Again, I don't know what goes into the mind of the PR team at ACPS, but it's curious as to why they haven't.
It's been almost 2 weeks. It's very curious of why that hasn't happened.
Yeah. Yes. Again, I'm not going to speculate on anything else except that there doesn't seem to be any reason to say that there wasn't mandatory reporting that was followed by a police investigation, and you would assume that once that investigation is complete, they'll let us know. It would be very bizarre. I mean, I don't know what would happen if it goes multiple weeks or the investigation is concluded and they haven't made a statement.
I mean, in the call to action, I mention in the call to action, the longer they wait, the more
Culpable.
There's doubt and distrust.
Yeah.
And I called it a dangerous dynamic. Like, the parent, so we're getting reached out by different groups. So the group that's reaching out to me the most is mothers, moms. And it's not just moms at Albemarle High School, it's moms at schools everywhere. The second largest group that's reaching out to us is teachers. And we've had...
What's the concern you're hearing from teachers?
Well, I'll put this in perspective, and I don't want to utilize a name, but as soon as I mention this, you'll remember. Either the last time or the second to last time you were on the show with a teacher. Mm-hmm. That individual, who's extremely outspoken and very bright and intelligent, now is unable to come on the show.
Interesting.
Is not able to come on the show, despite a conversation after the school board meeting that I attended with this individual. Who watches the show, it probably will be hearing what I'm saying here. After that school board meeting, we had a conversation in the parking lot, and this teacher said, absolutely, I want to come on your show the next week. And then the next day, when working to schedule the interview, there was a conversation that this teacher had with a higher up, and that higher up said, no, we're not allowing any media with the teachers anymore.
I mean, just to think about it from their side, they want to control the information that's being put out, and so that there's no discrepancies in information. Does that seem reasonable or unreasonable?
I think that is a slippery slope. And why I think it's a slippery slope, and you know this better than just about anyone in this community, the teachers are already right now super disenchanted and demoralized.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that disenchantment and demoralization, adding another layer of you can't do this compounds the matter for them and creates even more frustration to the point of furiousness. Now, here's a very unique comment that was sent to us. My daughter is and this is on the I Love CVille Instagram, under the post. The I Love CVille Instagram, where my call to action was positioned, that one post, because when you start getting an account on Instagram that has over 10,000 followers, you're provided different analytics tools by Instagram because you're seen as kind of a mega account. Ours has 13,200. This is documented on the internet, okay? So I'm able to see analytics on the Instagram's account that personal accounts or other accounts that have less than 10,000 followers do not have.
Okay.
So on this right here, there's a function that says View Insights, okay? I can click View Insights and it can show me on this post how many people were reached by the one post alone. I clicked View Insights and I'm showing it with Lee Elberson here. On this one post alone, there's the number. 7,823. On the one Instagram post alone, only that one.
Yeah.
And that call to action was sent to over 80 social media channels at one time when I published it. Okay, so you obviously, because I'm reading your body language and seeing the wheels turning, you quickly did some math extrapolations, and now you're trying to estimate the true reach of what we did, and you're now thinking, good God, this guy's reaching a lot of people. Okay, so in the comments section of this one post, this is what a teacher said. A mom said. Clarify, mom said.
Okay,
Parent. My daughter is a student at Western Albemarle High School, and yesterday she was in proximity to a group of students watching the video. She was so upset and disturbed by what she heard, she texted me in distress. I alerted the counselor and asked that administration be made aware of this. The video is being distributed and consumed on school grounds during school hours. Considering the content is violent and a sexual assault of a minor, it should be considered illegal to watch or share it. I am furious not only for the victim and his family, but for students who are unwillingly exposed to the gruesome and violent act that's being circulated around. The silence from the school board is deafening. I then hear, then I'm going to pass it back to you, and we're going to come up with solutions here, okay? I then hear from more moms. And you know what, there's so many, the story is evolving. It's taking on this life of its own. And the moms now are reaching out to us that their middle school children are seeing it. And a topic for another day is, why do middle school children have smartphones and access to social media unsupervised? That's certainly a topic for another day, but that's the era of 2022 that we live in.
Or another question is, why is a video like that not violate policies on TikTok and Instagram, which clearly have abuse guidelines? They say, TikTok just launched their 18 and over platform. It's like, why does this not violate their policies? That's a discussion for another day. I would say that's a problem with the social media.
With the social
that we're
platforms.
Subscribing to, yes.
Yeah, but the social platforms, horrific to say, are in the business of monetizing content.
That's true.
Okay, so what also is happening is that video's been saved from the social platforms to camera rolls on phones.
Oh, yeah.
So they're no longer living in the ecosystem of the social platform.
Yeah, once it's out there for good.
That's what I'm saying.
You can't truly delete content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He knows this extremely well. Okay? So I want to go solutions 100%, but now middle school children are seeing it, and they're seeing it on school hours. I'm hearing from private schools that have seen it, public schools that are seeing it, folks that are in the Shenandoah. I mean, it's gone. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that is another element to this. And I guess from the public relations standpoint, what I've asked, and you identified it well, Mr. John Blair's done it well, there should be a statement where leaders of a school system, is Almar it's the largest school system in Central Virginia, right?
Yep.
The largest one, where they say, there's an ongoing investigation, there's nothing wrong with that, and then we've integrated new protocols or methodologies to prevent other problems, hazing, worse from happening. And to your point in the beginning, that's straightforward public relations.
Yeah. There's some analogies I make, but I don't want to make things worse. I think, yeah, it's curious. You know, once they do make a statement, it's possible that some new information will come to light, which will enlighten us on why they made that decision. But you know, after the fact, it'll be hard to reconcile with them not putting the parents' hearts and eyes at rest, saying, we have this under control, this is an isolated incident, because I think that's, as a parent and as an educator, we normally think worst case scenario. That was the one incident that was captured on camera. How many aren't? How pervasive is this in the school system? And that's, I think, what you want from the leadership, is to say, this is an isolated incident, and we are taking, we're taking this very seriously. It's under investigation. We'll let you know when we have more data.
There you go.
Yeah, again.
There you just did it.
Okay, but I'm not in charge of a $400 million school system, so I don't think it.
Budget's like $260 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, but do you have to have the credentials and the titles to be empathetic? And you question often my empathy. You do. You've said it many times on the show. And
I do.
Here
sometimes I say it in jest, and sometimes I say it seriously.
Right.
You're right.
And here I'm empathizing. What I'm doing is thinking about it as a dad.
Yeah.
And hearing what my wife says at the dinner table and what difficulty she's had processing this.
So just maybe as a sort of pivot here.
Yeah. So where are we going to go? Pivot to solutions? Is that what we want to do?
No. Well, let's save solutions for the end, because I think this might go into a larger scale issue. So much of your show while I was away in Iceland and traveling was on education.
Yes.
Kind of a shame I wasn't here. I'd love to pop in on a couple of these. Loved a lot of your guests.
Which ones resonated with you?
Bill Munkachi was, I think he resonated because he just comes across as very genuine.
Right.
You know, he's telling his story. He doesn't oversell anything. When you asked him about whether or not he's interested in joining the school board, you can see he's very hesitant to do that, but he just seems like he's telling a story after years of somebody who's given their heart and life to this. So yeah, he really resonated. I'd love to meet him. I think it'd be nice to make an introduction. I'd love to.
You want me to?
Yeah,
I'm happy
definitely.
to do that. I thought I called it the best.
For one, we're always looking to hire individuals like that at Claiborne, so it's.
I called it the best interview we've ever done. Lee, you're up there too.
Okay, good. So anyway, yeah, I think that resonated. And then hearing from, was it Meg Bryce?
Yeah, Dr. Meg Bryce.
I think, you hear from the parent side, you hear from the teacher side. Does it seem like there's larger scale struggles here, right? Like, is this an isolated incident, or is it indicative of larger issues? Maybe the Albemarle County Public Schools has a lot on their plate right now. They're attacking a lot of different areas. They have teachers leaving en masse. They have
students leaving en masse.
Yeah, they're struggling to try to keep students attentive at school for being away for so many years.
COVID quarantine.
Yeah.
Post collateral damage of that.
I think
curriculum issues.
Yeah.
That showed up at the governor's election. And we can leave it at that.
Yes.
Okay.
I think, something that was talked about in Meg Bryce's interview that I don't think it was given enough gravity is there is a serious mental health deterioration in the country. And if it were just students, that would be a large enough problem. But it's students and staff, right? You have teachers, they're also suffering from mental health crisis. There's enough data out there that the White House has published a white paper on the statistics of this. I'm happy to link it. But, it's what I always think of as an analogy. If I was a teacher and I'm struggling after coming out of COVID, and then I have students that they're teenagers, they don't really have great emotional control. And so I'm trying to keep my boat above water and at the same time trying to put people in the boat, right? I'm treading water and trying to keep the boat afloat while other people are getting on. It's a difficult task, and so to me, that's why it's no surprise that teachers were leaving en masse. And this is not unique to Albemarle County Public Schools. This is happening across the country. But, I think we hold ACPS to a higher standard. Virginia is in the 10th percentile in the nation in school systems, and Albemarle County Public Schools is in the 15th percentile in the state. So you're talking about a school that has a very high bar compared to the rest of the nation. But
the amount spent per pupil is top 10% in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and that's...
Top 10% the amount spent per pupil.
It kind of makes sense. It's tough to trivialize it as pay to play, but if you spend more per student, you're going to increase the level of education. The other thing that was covered in the interview last week was talking about...
With whom? Which one? Dr. Bryce?
Yeah, Meg Bryce's interview.
Okay.
Comparing independent schools, which it commonly referred to as private schools, but in the industry they're called independent schools. Comparing independent schools to public schools, the amount spent per student, you're comparing apples to oranges. It's not the same comparison because independent schools, especially larger ones, do a really good job of fundraising. And so the amount that they get for tuition is not the only money that goes into school. On top of that, you have endowments, which are meant to pay for buildings. And on top of that, when you're running at a ratio of 7 students per teacher, and you give a little bit more money, you're going to see that in the classroom. Albemarle County Schools is running at twice that, 14-to-1 ratio. So when you're operating at capacity, the argument already breaks down. So for those reasons, it's not a good comparison. If in the end, you're trying to use that argument to say the quality of education is higher in independent schools, 100%. I don't think anyone has ever contested that. And during COVID, you remember I said the value proposition for independent schools has never been higher. I think that's still the case because public schools haven't had a chance to adapt yet. I'll turn back over to you for a few minutes because obviously I could talk about this.
No, please keep going. I'm going to stop talking. You're killing it.
Okay. So, I think I try to not be, we're being armchair quarterbacks here, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So I just run a small tutoring company in the Central Virginia and Chicago. And so...
In Chicago?
Yes. And trying to think about running an organization of a $250 million budget, that's probably apples to oranges. But I will say that I do try to think about how Albemarle County tried to handle learning loss. That everything that they've tried to do, grading for equity, as produced by Feldman in a research-backed paper many years ago, there's research to it. 100% Grading for equity, it is in theory supposed to do that. It's supposed to remove implicit biases. I think that's what you didn't cover a lot last week. Implicit bias is just, I mean, everybody has them. It's just if you see somebody that looks like you, you're more likely to talk to that person versus somebody who doesn't look like you. Everybody does that. There's nothing you can do about it. Grading for equity is supposed to remove some of those implicit biases. Now, if the only thing school was supposed to do was to just educate the students, and there was nothing else to it as such as socialization and providing structure and accountability, then grading for equity in a vacuum would probably be successful. Trying to implement grading for equity coming off of the most unprecedented year in school systems history, in hindsight, probably was not a good idea.
Mr. Bill said that.
Yeah. I think he thinks a lot like me. Good scientific practice is to not change too much at once, right? Yesterday, we had a technical issue with the show. If Judah went and changed 10 things and it got fixed, we wouldn't know what actually made the difference. So you change one thing at a time. Problem was they tried to change too much at once. And I think you mentioned this. You mentioned that they did that to help students who were performing subpar, help them pass. I'm not going to deny that that could have been a consideration because, let's face it, I mean, if you started to fail 25% of the student body, I'm not sure how the school system would handle that. They're already operating at capacity. Imagine saying, hey, you actually have 25% more sixth graders now. Now, if every grade fails...
You're talking social promotion.
Yeah.
See, they all cringe when I make that comment, social promotion.
But what's the alternative, right?
The alternative...
Do you hold people to the same standard?
No, you have to socially promote.
Yeah.
They have to socially promote in the public school. It's a catch-22.
Tell me what you think social promotion is.
Social promotion is the advancement of a young man or a young lady to the next grade level despite key performance indicators suggesting they should not advance.
Key KPIs based on a non-pandemic year, right?
Social promotion has happened for generations, for decades.
Yeah. So you're saying that problem exists, it was just exacerbated during the pandemic.
100%.
Okay.
This was happening way before COVID.
I won't refute that, and I think that's
But you know what?
Fair.
I'll say this, Lee, and then throw it back to you, and you're crushing it. The comments are coming in faster than I can keep up. I swear, I promise you, viewers and listeners, we will get to as many of these comments from Jennifer Nunley-Hux, from Linnell Eldalanu, from Blake asking comments. Catherine Lochner ran for Albemarle County School Board. She's questioning your statistics. She said, I've never seen an Albemarle County public school classroom with 14 students. It is way higher than that. I've also had many moms say it's way higher than 14-1. 14-1 is what Lee pulled from the ACPS website. That's what he's referencing.
It's an average statistic, I think, over all the school system. Again, if it's higher than that, then the problem is much worse.
It's way worse.
Yeah.
Okay, and you know, that comment is coming in by the couple dozen right now that the 14-1 is not real life.
Okay.
So throwing that out there. So social promotion and why the schools have to do it. If the school does not advance the young man or the young woman to the next grade level, despite not having the academic performance scores to advance, they have an even larger conundrum on their hands. And the larger conundrum on their hands is a young man or a young lady that is physically, might not mentally, but physically more mature than their peers in that classroom. And that physical maturation in high school in particular has other dynamics that need to be considered. Puberty, sexual, okay, and I'll leave it at that. Furthermore, let's talk from an academic standpoint. If they are not advanced and they remain at the lower grade level, the grade level that their performance indicates, that then impacts the advancement of all the students that are in that lower grade level. Because the teacher cannot help, whether consciously or subconsciously, of teaching to the students that are perhaps not at the top of peak performance in the classroom.
Yeah, something, and I would say from an empathetic standpoint, what you didn't mention is what it does for confidence. It severely increases attrition and decreases the probability that student will graduate from high school.
100%.
They know if you start holding a student back, their ability to go to college immediately drops. Like it's a pure statistic. I think, the other side of that is, every teacher faces the problem, especially when you first get into teaching. You're like, I'm gonna teach. All these brilliant minds. I'm gonna move them forward. When you're in a large classroom, the bell curve just starts to spread out wider and wider, and so then you look at the really high performers and you look at the students struggling, and you have to narrow your range.
You
and say,
teach down.
I'm just going to try to move as much of the students forward as possible, and you know that you're not doing the best by the students who
Your top achievers.
they're top achievers,
Yeah.
and you know that the low achievers, that they aren't being fully engaged without supplemental support. So it's a crisis I think every teacher faces, and especially at the public school system, which is why we need more staffing. The only way, they say increase their salary, definitely increase their salary, but more staffing, having teachers' aides and support staff will just make it easier for them.
Keep going. You're on fire. It's 20 to 1. Multiple parents are saying it's between 20 and 25 to 1 for Albemarle ACPS. I'm seeing that comment by the dozens from parents.
Okay. So then, if you look at the statistics that they publish, I'm wondering if they use staff to student ratio, support staff included, and not just teachers.
Okay, I'm a very cut to the chase kind of guy. Or are the statistics smoke and mirrors?
There is what do they call it? Data qualification, right?
Juke in the stats is what you could call it.
That's another way to put it.
Juke in the stats.
Data qualification, I think, is what they call it in the data mining field. Then the independent schools do it too.
No, of course. Everyone jukes the stats.
So regardless, though, we're talking the discrepancy between independent school and public school is then even higher. So we'll get to this at the end of the show. What's great, we're recognizing problems. It's many of us can recognize problems. Do we have realistic solutions?
I have some.
You have some. So we're going to get to that at the end of the show for sure.
I love when Lee's on the show.
Why?
I look at that. It's easy. It's easy to host the show when you're on the show. It was easy to host the show when Dr. Bryce was on the show. It was easy to host the show when Kelly Jackson was on the show. Oftentimes when I'm hosting the show, I'm having to, shape the discussion, help get where we're supposed to go out there.
I appreciate
With you, I sit back. With Dr. Bryce, with Kelly, I sat back. I listened to learn.
So the other elements, so again, I think when we criticize the decisions that ACPS has made on the grading equity, again, the research shows that grading equity removes implicit bias. If you remove students having to do homework, which during the pandemic we had hundreds of Claiborne students who, if you don't have to do homework, you aren't going to do it. And so I think grading for equity gets away from maybe what one of the primary goals of school is, which is counterintuitive. It maybe isn't education, it's structure and accountability first. You need to give students that structure and hold them accountable for their actions. And then you can insert any sort of academic endeavor you want into those time slots. But if you don't give them that structure and accountability, only the intrinsic learners are going to succeed.
The self-starters.
And those, by most statistics, there's like an Institute of Intrinsic Learning. It could be single, so 10% or less probably. So that's.
I wasn't one of those.
I wasn't either.
I was a coaster. I was the guy that sat in the back, got other kids off track, distracted them, didn't have to pay attention or do the work, but did well in school. and it pissed off the teachers. Now, that only gets you to a certain point.
Definitely. What I tell students all the time, I think people probably know is that we deal with thousands of families, and I talk to probably 1,000 parents a year, and what I see from really brilliant kids more often than not is you can fly by the seat of your pants for a long time. I didn't really have to study until I went to college.
Same.
But I can tell you that at some point you're going to hit a wall.
Yeah.
And when you hit that wall, the longer you wait, the harder you hit, because, again, one of the points of going to school and abiding by the structure and accountability is to develop those study skills. Because if you try to develop them once you're older, it's a lot harder to get your brain to train for those, because you've already developed a lot of bad habits, such as cramming. Hey, I'm gonna deprioritize this. Hey, I can just do my homework at the last minute. Sure you can, but you're not going to produce the best work product, and inevitably I think that makes for a more difficult person to hire. There's very few industries where you just want to hire true brilliance. Most industries, you need somebody who's going to show up and meet deadlines.
God, dude is crushing it. 100%.
100%. So the other thing, I think, again, just going back to the decisions that ACPS has made and the discussions that are happening, SROs, right? Why
School resource officers.
Yeah,
no
school
acronyms.
resource officers.
No
Yeah.
acronyms.
School police.
Yeah,
basically,
school. Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. The research shows that.
Are you pro or con school police? Come on. Yes or no, school police in the hallways?
I think it's dependent on the school. And because here's why. Because I think, again, in a vacuum, SROs, can decrease the mental health. They can make students feel like they're on edge. It's like once you see like if you were to put a metal detector here, just out of safety, I would be worried for my safety here the second I walked in.
I do not buy that.
Because why? Because then the rationale is, why do I need that? I'm just going on research. There is research that backs this up. But what it doesn't answer is SROs.
You get nervous going through a metal detector at an airport?
Yes, that's a really good example. Did you know that TSA only catches about 10% of weapons and contraband that go through it? There's a big, in the industry, they call it security theater. It makes us feel better, and I'm glad, because if it wasn't there, I would be worried.
Exactly.
Right? It makes us feel better. So that's
called. You know what that's called in my business? Managing perception.
Okay, so
that's what I do for a living.
Exactly. So I think when you try to think about the decision that they're making, they're basing it on pure research, which shows that it can deteriorate mental health in the school and make students feel worried. It doesn't address the big picture, which is that parents want the kids to feel safe, and all it takes is for you to catch and break up one fight, and then you feel affirmed that that the security resource officers are there for a reason. So again, I think,
you know who worries about metal detectors at schools?
You're going to say criminals, right?
The students who have something to hide.
That's not always the case, Jerry.
You know who has beef with the police?
That's not always the case, Jerry. I think that's a flawed argument.
Okay, well,
but what I'm trying to do is, I don't want to consistently just fire at ACPS and say, you made a wrong decision. I want to try to think about why they made the decision. And when you look at the research that they point to, it makes sense. I was an experimental physicist, so I know very well the difference between theoretical and experimental. And I understand trusting theory, but what they're not doing is they're not listening to enough of the experimental data, and that is parents coming back and students coming back and saying, we like this. Okay, well then great. Then that research, it's probably true, but it's not going to work in our given situation. And I think that's what they need to go into this with, is saying, we need to think about feedback from the parents. And maybe they are. Maybe overwhelmingly the school board gets enough indication that they think equity grading is working, and there's only a minority that's reaching out and saying, we don't like grading equity. I don't think that's the case with the grading policy. I don't know what their feedback has been for security resource officers.
Well, I heard Mr. Bill on Friday, 1 week from today, last Friday, say the majority of teachers want school resource officers. Were those not his exact words?
I did hear him say that too.
Yeah.
So
I hear from the other teachers that direct messaged, they're saying, good God, put the SROs back in school, the cops, put the school police back in schools. You know why they're saying that to me?
you're concerned. You want your kids to feel safe.
Here's why they're saying this to me. They're saying, without the cops in the schools, I don't even like the word cops. Without the police officers in the schools, it is now our responsibility to be the police officers in the schools. And we're not trained to do this. We're underpaid. We're already overworked. And having no police officers in the schools means that falls on us. Did you hear Mr. Bill recap the story of the 50 to 60 student stampede at Almora High School? Mm-hmm. He was the guy that was the breezeway attendant, air quotes, the breezeway gatekeeper. You know what he did when the 50 to 60 kid stampede went through? He stepped to a side and let the stampede run through.
I mean,
I would have done the same.
You don't have any choice.
You have no choice.
So just to follow up on what you asked me earlier, I think SROs, I think resource officers, school resource officers are a good idea in this case. But I just want to present the data so that we try to empathize with the decisions that ACPS has made. Again, I don't have any issues when an initial decision is made. I think what many of the families have issues with is when it looks like it's not working out for a reasonable time period, that you don't adapt that policy or you don't change that policy. Nobody expects every decision to be perfect, and I think that's what I hear from, I think that's what you're hearing too. It's like, hey, not every decision is going to be a home run, so let's just adapt them once we know that they're not working out.
But you just explained that the school, that ACPS, let's take Almora High School. Mm-hmm. You just indicated Almora High School's got too many kids. They're overpopulated. That's a fact. Almora High School is understaffed. That's a fact. Almora High School perhaps is underfunded. That could be debated. Okay, he's going to say that's a fact.
I would love to hear somebody debate that it's not, that it's perfectly funded.
Okay, so we'll say underfunded. We could say that's in the fact category, family. Mm-hmm. Okay? Putting a curriculum or new policies or methodologies in play, you indicate it takes forever to do. A good example of this is, why haven't we seen Singapore math in public schools, where Singapore math is front and center at the Covenant School and at St. Anne's Belfield Academy?
Do your viewers know what Singapore, does everybody know what Singapore math is?
You know what? Can I tell you something and be very straightforward? Can you hold on. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Oh, the jacket's coming off. Yeah. Uh-oh, my gosh, what's happening here? Oh, Jared's about to break it down here. Okay. Do you have a whiteboard, or we can do some Singapore math?
No. I just get a little, passionate.
Yeah.
Again, it's a passionate topic. It's my kid.
Of course.
It's our children.
Yeah.
Okay? So our son is I've talked about him all the time, a rising kindergartner. And we're doing the school tours. I didn't know a darn thing. I'm not using profanities these days on the show, because the moms say they've become very engaged with the show because we're talking kids. So now the moms are listening to the show, streaming in their car. The parents. Can't say moms anymore?
I'm just saying that it doesn't, not exclusive to moms, it's parents.
Can I say moms and dads?
You can say moms and dads, yeah.
Okay, moms and dads. Okay, the moms and dads are listening to the show in the car with little ears, as we've been told, in the car. So we're doing the tours. And the first time I ever heard the phrase Singapore math was like 2 weeks ago. Literally 2 weeks ago at St. Anne's Belfield. And then the second time I ever heard the phrase Singapore math was yesterday at the Covenant School. I am 41 years old, and I never heard the phrase Singapore math before until the last 2.5 weeks at two private schools that are expensive to go to. Some would say arguably some of the best.
Definitely.
Right? Okay? First time I ever heard the phrase. I don't even know what the heck Singapore math is. It seems to be a way of math where it's much more visual, much more using the number 10 Okay, but you obviously know what Singapore. Can you give us the?
I'll break it down.
The
Yeah.
7th grade version or the 5th grade version of what Singapore math is?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief.
Please.
So the reason why you and Judah and I have never heard about Singapore math is it wasn't really it wasn't even like minimally adopted in the U.S. until I would say the movement started about 10 or 15 years ago.
Covenant said they did it 10 years ago. First
Yeah.
one in the area 10 years ago.
So it's actually based on mathematics that they teach in Singapore. So when you look at statistics, Singapore students, by the time they graduate high school, they are 90% efficient in proficient in calculus. In the U.S., it's single digits, 3 or 4%. So they are orders of math. They're like 15 or 20 times
They're
more
kicking our
competent.
butts.
Yes. And when they started doing research as to why that was the case, it goes all the way back to the beginning in how you learn basic arithmetic. Singapore math is getting you essentially to understand when you see a number like 183, that's 100, 8 tens, and 3 ones.
Yeah.
And it seems like a pretty basic concept, but we didn't learn that, and it affects every sort of mental calculation you do, and the ability to be able to do quick mental math and understand when something is way off doesn't happen in the U.S. If you ask a student, most high school students, a basic word problem, over 50% of them won't understand if it's 10 times different. Imagine not knowing your bank account balance is off by 10. Hey, I only have $900 instead of $9,000. You would notice that. But in most calculations, we don't. And it all is rooted in the fact of how we place those digits. So that's all Singapore math is. The problem is you can't just teach that once at kindergarten. You have to change the entire system. St. Anne's started a decade ago. I would say
Covenant was the first.
Yeah, I would say by when I looked into it, it takes probably about 5 years if you focus all your efforts to be able to get all of the classes to do that. And then what you're going to realize is that if you don't start with that in kindergarten, the 3rd graders, it's going to be harder and harder to get them to adapt Singapore math. So I guess what you do is you just start teaching it in kindergarten, and then you start working on the 1st grade curriculum, and then that's one way to do it. I think they've done this in Michigan, where you just start with one grade level, and then starting at that grade level, they're going to learn Singapore math, and then every class that came before it is going to stick with traditional math. So it's a humongous endeavor. They have companies devoted to coming in and training teachers for Singapore math, because teachers don't know how to teach Singapore math because we didn't learn it. It took me, as a physicist and a mathematician, about
This guy's a rocket scientist.
no, plasma physicist.
Okay,
but
plasma physicist.
nuclear fusion was my research. But anyway,
Put it in perspective how difficult it was.
It's just a new way of thinking. It took me about 2 years to start thinking about things in terms of Singapore math. Now, as a physicist, and a mathematician, I have a really good understanding of number properties. But even that, it took me a couple years. So it's going to be difficult for parents, unless they devote 10 hours a week to this for a couple years, for them to really be able to calculate and think in terms of Singapore
I'll put
math.
it even in perspective, and I'm not going to say which one. I'm respecting anonymity here. I'm not going to say which one.
Oh, man, processing over there.
Yeah. Okay. Choosing words very carefully here.
Good.
Of the many schools we toured, one of them indicated when it comes to Singapore math, we don't even want the parents working with the kids at home when it comes to homework and helping them understand Singapore math. And the point was because the parents do not have any exposure or foundation on Singapore math. That was literally said.
I've had parents come to me outraged that the school told them that, and I try to sort of ease that frustration.
So you've heard that before?
Yeah, and I can see why. As a parent, I would be infuriated. What are you telling me I can't help my kid? The analogy is really, if you come from an ESL family, so let's say you grew up speaking Spanish, and your child grew up speaking English, and when you teach them, you try to teach them in Spanish, but you're teaching them writing principles that are only translatable in English. It's really two different languages, and so that's why they don't want parents doing it, because we have bad habits. I mean, I could say that. We're in the percentage of families who don't know really basic math. Like we would have, many adults have trouble dividing a fraction by a fraction. If you grew up in Singapore, 90% of adults can do that because it's sort of inculcated. Now that's maybe an example that's esoteric, but that just goes to show what, changing the math pedagogy can do. It's going to make them more successful. I'm biased, obviously, but if you know math better, you would be a better job candidate.
Yeah, you'd be better at life. You're better at life if you know math better.
I didn't want to overstate it like that because I'm obviously super biased to mathematics.
You're better at life if you know math better. Okay,
So,
Catherine Lochner ran for school board in the 1990s, Lee. All the DODEA schools use Singapore math. The military-dependent students all went to high-end colleges as their math skills were amazing.
yep. So, other statistics. So, we need, if we want these changes, we need more mathematicians in schools. I couldn't find any statistics on this except for nationwide, but I think it's close to about 40% of teachers in public schools teaching math don't have math degrees. And that's not, that I can understand that that's not necessarily has to be the case, because we hire tutors to tutor math and they don't all have math degrees. You can be good at math without that. It has to be a passion of yours. But we need to look for more math graduates, and only about 1% of the degrees right now granted are in math, pure mathematics. That's expected to increase by about 25% over the next 10 years, but how do you get them to come to a school system where they're making less? So other statistics, maybe the viewers can help me out with this. The starting salary at ACPS just got increased, right?
For teachers.
56,000, right?
Okay.
At Covenant, it's 64,000. So it doesn't seem like, it's 8,000, maybe that's not a big deal. I mean, at those salaries, 8,000 is huge. An extra $1,000 in your pocket a month, roughly $1,000 in your pocket a month could be huge. So how do you bridge that gap? I mean, I think if you were to try to bridge that gap with all the teachers at Albemarle County Public Schools, you're probably looking at raising the budget another
Millions.
40 million, probably.
Millions. It's
Yeah.
hard to even project here without, how many teachers are there? Catherine, Catherine would probably
Yeah.
know this. Catherine Lochner, how many teachers are at ACPS? Neil Williamson, do you know that answer? How many total, I mean, we could find that online. We're in the middle of a live talk show here, which is...
Yeah, so anyway, so you're talking about probably
we need like a,
stats
you know,
machine?
like PTI, pardon the interruption, Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon, they have StatBoy. We need I need a third or fourth, we need like a statistician team.
Dude, okay.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to, I
I was
apologize
about to
for
say,
interrupting.
honestly, I would apply for that job because I love stats, but
Me too,
also
I love stats.
I love talking about stats too.
Yeah.
So, all
You're
right,
the on-air guy, though.
so we've listed now several issues. We know that Bill said it last week.
Mr. Bill.
Mr. Bill, we have issues with the staffing there. There's not enough, right? There's a volume problem. You need to get, you need to attract talent. If their choice is work at an independent school which has at least half the student rate, you're working with at least half the students. It sounds like from what the parents are saying, it could be a third of the number of students. So you get much closer interaction with your students, which from a teacher standpoint you want. You want to make a difference in every student's lives. If you have a classroom of a dozen, you can realistically make an impact in their life. If you have a class of 30, you're definitely going to remember their names and you're likely going to remember about where they're at, but you're not likely to make a true impact in all of their lives. And I think that's what I think starts to take the light out of the eyes in teachers is they want to all make impact in all of their students' lives. So they're going to go to the place that has more impact, less fights, more money. So that's not a problem that's going to be easily fixed. Luckily, you have people like Bill Munkachi who, are there and understand that the mission is to try to help the under-resourced students that may be at ACPS and to just help for the public good. But that's not, ultimately, that is only going to carry you so far.
Kevin Yancey is watching the show. He's the king of Waynesboro.
King of Waynesboro,
And the
wow.
king of Waynesboro says, Lee and Jerry, there are 1,378 ACPS teachers.
Okay.
1,378. You're much quicker with math. You got Singapore math. This guy just does not have Singapore math. So if you're giving them each an extra...
8,000 more. It's 12 million a year.
Okay, there's
Yeah.
the number.
Yeah, and
Singapore
then-
math versus no Singapore math. There it goes right there.
Yeah, that's salaries, compensation, there's probably support staff. So yeah, you're looking at, that number alone, 12 million a year, they just asked for, a $30 million increase in the budget to raise the salaries. So great, that's a good first step. Just thinking of trying to get on par with what the teachers could get in an independent school would be a good first step. Then you have support staff, and that's again what was talked about on the show. So what are some of the solutions? Let's change to a solutions-oriented mindset, Jerry.
I got solutions.
Okay, what are our solutions?
Okay, how about this solution? Why are we not prioritizing the value of a trade school and K-Tech? Why is K-Tech not more front and center? If we create, I'm a branding and advertising guy. If there's an advertising or branding campaign that makes the trades sexy or cool, this is what would happen. You would see the students that are on the academic margin or worse behind consider trade schools. And if they consider trade schools, the student body at the public schools would diminish in size because they're going to trade schools and not public schools. And that would make the job of the educator a little bit easier because there's less students to teach. Trades,
Well,
when
that's
they
not, you still need to teach them. You have different staffing requirements. Now you need to staff K-Tech.
K-Tech, okay. Why aren't trades a solution to these students that are on the academic margin? The plumbers, the electricians, these cats are making darn near close to six figures.
Well, yeah, when you average out the average student loan, over 20 years they make more.
That's what I'm saying.
Than most college graduates.
Because they don't have the student loans.
I
They
think
start out making money.
yeah, I think
Excuse
Well-
me, my coffee went down the wrong pipe. I apologize.
drinking coffee at 1:30. You're
I drink-
gonna be up late tonight, Jerry.
2 or 3 of these a day. I sleep 4 hours a night. Ask my wife. 4 hours a night.
I'm back on an 8-hour sleep schedule, man. I don't know. Okay, so first thing is, I don't think that helps with the budget. I don't think, because now you're just moving them to a different institution, and you still need to staff that. So I still think you need to increase the budget. I don't think that fixes the budget.
Okay,
issue.
then if you're going to say increase the budget, that's what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
saying, okay, can I jump in here and then I'll throw it back to you? Okay?
Wait, can I say the second thing about what you were talking about trade school, why
Yeah.
they aren't going into it? I think it has to do with perception. Four-year college is still seen as the gateway to success. There's a stigma associated with it, and you'll see in like upper class echelons, the questions that happen at parties, and one that I don't try to ask anymore is, where'd you go to school? What do you do? It's a class
Dude, I
separation.
never asked that
I don't know,
question.
but it's a
Yeah.
class separation, and it's not a good or a bad. It's just like that's what we've been trained to do because it's a class hierarchy, and so if that is
Who
a
asked-
question that classes people, again, I'm just basing this on research of classification and why we still see college as the gateway to success. That's one of the reasons. Plus, university, it's a money-making bit. It's a trillion-dollar industry, right? How are you going to are you going to tell universities, hey, accept less students, make less money? It's not going to happen, right?
Okay, so you're saying let's consider this from every side. This is one of the many reasons why I love Lee Elberson on the show. You're saying let's fund the schools more, the public schools more.
Public schools.
You're saying that.
Yep.
Give Albemarle County public schools more money.
Or
Is that
don't-
what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
If
Straightforward, yes or no?
Wait a second. Can I say yes if the expectation is you're going to compare them to independent schools, even in the same universe? If you're going to say this is
Of
going to be,
course they're going to be compared.
Okay, then yes, you have to
You're
increase
saying
the budget.
saying literally yes, give ACPS more money.
Yeah,
Okay, want to know what the collateral damage of that is?
sure.
You give ACPS more money, where's that money going to come from?
Comes from us.
It's going to come from taxes.
Yep.
What predominant revenue stream is that going to come from?
Real estate.
What does that do if you tax real estate more?
Again.
What does it do if you tax real estate more?
Okay, Jerry. I mean, sure. We're
It
not.
gentrifies the community and makes it wealthy and homogenous. So the kids that you're trying to help by increasing the funding for ACPS are the exact kids that will be pushed out of Albemarle County by raising the taxes on real estate by funding ACPS at a greater clip.
Assuming that everything we've done goes exactly according to plan.
What does that mean?
Right. It means that if we're going to increase the school's budget by taxing us more, then yes, that is true. Is there some alternative? Are there politicians that are smarter than me and it's like, hey, we're going to use these funds or we're going to divert these funds into this? I'm just saying that.
You know what the number one Albemarle County,
Yeah.
the number one line item, most expensive line item on Albemarle County is schools.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's
it's
not even
60%,
close.
right? It's the budget's 585 and schools are 320.
Is that 2023, 2022?
It says 2023 is approved budget, I think. Yeah.
It's not even close. 60%.
Sorry, 242 out of 586.
Thank you. Yeah. 60%.
No, it's less than 60%.
What are we
but
at?
Yeah. It's at like 44% or something, yeah.
The number one is
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah.
So if we give the school, and I'm not opposed to giving the schools more money, okay? But I am opposed to using existing tax sources to fund the schools. If a board of supervisor, an enterprising or entrepreneurial board of supervisor, someone that may have a small business background board of supervisor, comes up with ways that are incremental tax sources, new sources of tax revenue, and earmarks those new tax sources of revenue for schools,
Fun to get
that's
fired
different.
up, isn't it?
That's completely different. That's completely different.
So this is good. I didn't gaslight you, but I knew this is the what you were going to take. So, good pivot point for this. How do we get more support for schools? The CARES Act allocated, for the state of Virginia, I think it's close to $2 billion to support education and to support learning loss. It was part of the Secondary Emergency Education Relief Fund. This is meant to help support schools and prevent learning loss, and it was initially meant to go out to nonprofits and go out to organizations. So that money has only been about 5 or 6% used. So if we're trying we're in a tough situation where we're trying to fix a problem that started 2 years ago, and it's gonna continue to be pervasive. So I think having support structures, because that's what Mr. Bill was saying, is if teachers had more support, they would be more successful. So you need more independent organizations, and I'm not doing this as a plug for Claiborne, but there's a lot of nonprofits in Charlottesville that could support this, and honestly across the state, because what we're talking about is not unique to Charlottesville. It's all over the country.
Neil
frankly.
Williamson said this is the most expensive line item for every locality is schools.
Yeah.
Every locale. Okay, so
Kids are number one, right? You said
Yeah.
at the beginning of the show.
Kids are
It's
number
our number one priority. So I
my
think
only problem, and I'm all for funding schools. I am all for giving the schools more money. My only problem is using existing tax sources like real estate to fund those schools incrementally.
I understand,
Because
and you know,
that's
I think
going to marginalize, that's going to take the kids we're trying to help and push them out.
you're thinking like a politician in terms of implementing these policies, and I appreciate
I'm thinking
that.
like
That's
a
smart.
small business owner.
Yeah, and
like a
I
small
appreciate
business
that.
owner.
But you're also looking at all the steps it takes to do that. So I think going and utilizing funds that have already been allocated to help the school systems is number one. So any organization that has an educational specialty, apply for grants. They're pretty much dropping the RFP process. They're not even doing
No acronyms.
requests for proposals. they're pretty much dropping that process. So if you have a way to support it, you can submit to, again, it's ESSER fund. It's part of the CARES stimulus fund. The money's already been allocated. It's there. It's waiting to be used. It'll expire in 2025 if it doesn't get used. And so this, I think, is a great alternative to increasing the budget to helping support the school system. There's probably in our community, given how big Albemarle is, there's probably at least $40 million a year available to organizations to help support it. Now that's a lot of infrastructure. If somebody came to Claiborne and was like, hey, could you guys disperse $40 million? I'd say, no, not with our current capacity. I wouldn't know where to start. So you need a lot of organizations to help disperse this fund. Second item, one that I don't think costs any money and touches on a lot of what's been talking about, they need policy changes to help maintain staff confidence at ACPS.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, they're like,
Straight 7th grade talk.
yeah. Kids need structure and accountability. Revoke the grading equity policy.
Thank God. Thank you. Amen.
Yeah,
Amen. The teachers are saying this.
Yeah, so there's policy changes that can happen. I think, again, we said it pretty much every show I've been on, structure and accountability. Revoke that policy. I would be fascinated if it did worse. Right?
What does that mean?
I would be fascinated if for some reason you revoke the policy and it's like, oh, the kids are doing worse, right? Like, I don't think they could do much worse.
So you're
now.
basically saying if we hold the kids accountable, they're going to do better?
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, that's so obvious, right?
I mean, I think that it seems obvious to us. Again, they have a lot of rationale as to why, but without holding them accountable for it, they know now that
they could do nothing and still get promoted.
So from the school systems, here's what they say is, hey, put the teachers through more implicit bias training. They already do implicit bias training. Put them through more, because that will help solve what part of grading equity was meant to do. Is we want to make sure that there's no implicit bias that's causing teachers to help students that they like more. Give them more implicit bias training, but hold them accountable. So I think they could still cover both of those bases by revoking the equity for grading policy, but having more implicit bias training, saying, hey, we don't want you to have preference for students that you like, but you have to hold all students accountable.
Why don't we say this, okay? And, you're great. I love when you come on the show. I love when you come on the show. I
appreciate that.
I love it, okay?
Does that mean I get a free t-shirt?
I think we did give you a free t-shirt already.
Didn't
we give you a free t-shirt already?
Yeah.
We did.
Alex needs one though, okay? I mean, I need to start working on her. I'll get her.
We can give Alex a free t-shirt as well. I have no problem giving her a free t-shirt. We have to stop with this mentality that, and I hate to go back to this, that every kid gets a trophy, even for piss poor performance or coming in last place. Eventually, I made the comparison with my dad, and then I'll make the comparison with my son. I'm a diehard sports fan, diehard. I wanted to play professional basketball. Eventually, my dad looked at me somewhere between 9th and 10th grade, and he said, Jerry, your mother's 5'2", I'm barely 6 foot. You're not going to be very tall. You're going to be somewhere between 5'6" and 5'9". I'm right now 5'7.5". He was pretty accurate.
Still growing though.
Still growing. He says, you're not going to be a professional basketball player, and you need to realize that today.
Wow.
He told me that between 9th and 10th grade.
That's some tough love there.
You know what? He was the type of guy that let me touch the stove one time. I touched the stove. I remember this vividly. 1st grade, I touched the stove. It was on. I burned my hand. You know what happened? I never touched the stove again. He vividly said, don't play on the stoop in front of the house. There's 4 stairs you'll fall down onto the sidewalk and that concrete next to it. Guess what? He let me do it. I fell down and I never played on the stoop again. Okay? We need to start telling our kids.
Sounds like you're saying less coddling and less preventative.
We need to tell our children they aren't going to be good at everything. And some kids, whether it's in middle school or high school, maybe this happens in high school, need to hear from teachers and maybe their parents You are not going to be a plasma physicist. You're not going to be an advertising agency owner or a social media influencer.
You're not, I was about to say, you're not
Okay.
going to be a million view TikTok influencer.
You're not going to
Yeah.
be a TikTok influencer, right?
Yeah.
We have to have those frank conversations. Somehow, over the last couple generations, we got as parents, and it starts at home with moms and dads. Evidently, I'm allowed to say moms and dads. Okay? We
just
got,
said-
we got somehow, as parents, we got soft. We got coddled. We got, let's hug it out. Let's kumbaya. You know what I said to my son the other day? My kid's almost 5 years old. He loves to sing in the car. Loves to sing in the car. Loves to sing Jason Derulo songs in the car from Pandora. He goes, Daddy, am I a great singer? I said, son, I love to hear you sing. There's nothing that makes me happier than hearing you sing. And I want you to keep singing in the car for as long as you want. But are you a great singer? You're not great.
Wow. Jerry, he's 5, man.
And you know what he said? Okay, Dad. We take for granted
Yeah.
that these kids can take constructive criticism.
Well, I will say, I
They
mean,
can take it.
I'm laughing at you a little bit. There is an entire body of research. I think Greg Fairchild's group does this at UVA, but it's about resilience and grit. And that happens many times first of all, it happens with failure. So like you said, letting your kids fail and not trying to prevent every single failure from happening helps increase their grit and resilience, and that's been tied to 4-year graduation rates and success.
My wife, I bet you my wife who's watching right now is immediately thinking about this and saying telepathically, Jerry, bring this up right now. And sweetheart, if you're doing that, I got your telepathic connection. One of the schools, and I'm not going to say which one, that we toured for our son, uses the phrase fail forward. We teach failing forward. You know what failing forward means? We want the students to fail once, twice, because they're learning more from the failure, the process of failing, than the process of the teacher coming next to them and teaching them how to do it the first time.
I mean, very successful entrepreneur. Guy Kawasaki's book, Art of the
Love
Start,
him.
he says, fail early, fail often, right? Like, that's the only way you really learn. So I think when you're talking about like coddling, I mean, it's kind of a vague term. I think what you mean by that is trying to prevent your children from failing. Is that what you're implying by that? Okay.
Over-parenting, being a helicopter parent, being too much of a hand-holding parent, not letting them fall off the stoop.
There's also, I think the other thing too is you want children to discover things on their own. If you lead them to all of the avenues of success, at some point they're going to have to figure it out for themselves, and they don't develop critical thinking. So I think there's probably some research that shows that. It's really easy for me to play armchair parent. I imagine it's a lot harder when all you're doing, I mean, from a parent standpoint, they just don't want their kids to suffer, right? You're trying to prevent suffering from
That's the
your
number
kids.
one thing. You know what my dad told me in between, I think it was 9th grade. He goes, you're not going to play in the NBA, Jerry. But then you know what he said? My dad was great. You know what he said? And this is what I did with our son. He said, you're not going to play in the NBA. But what you are good at is you're a good leader. The kids follow you on the team. What you're good at is you're great with your words. And you're a good communicator. Maybe you consider forensics and speech and debate along with playing soccer. Because you have leadership skills and good communication skills, and maybe that could be something you can do professionally. Jesus, look at what I'm doing right now. 9th grade. He said, you're not going to do this, but consider this.
So that's your advice.
I mean, what do I know? I'm 41. I have a kid that's not even 5, and we have a second one on the way. Are we professionals? No. We're rookies. We're like in the baseball.
Yeah, you're 41. You look like you're 20-something.
We're in the baseball metaphor. We're in AA baseball, right?
Yeah.
We're not even the professional. We're not even the MLB. We're AA level. Okay. But this is what I'm going to do with our sons. We're going to shoot them straight. We're not going to BS them. We're going to let them fail forward. We are going to let them fail forward. We're going to let them bust their knee on the stoop. I'm not going to let them touch the stove because my wife would kill me and castrate me. So we're not going to do that. But we're going to let them fall off the stoop. And we're going to be very frank with them when it comes to skills and no skills.
So you're giving parenting advice. Can I give some parenting
Oh, yeah,
advice? Because
please.
throughout this, I went through a lot of research, and when I was looking through mental health, it said one of the most recent research articles that came out about social media says that kids spending 90 minutes or more on social media a day narrows collective attention span and adversely affects mental health. This is just a peer-reviewed journal article. So if I were a parent, what I would do is use that as my marker for like, hey, it's okay, you're welcome to go on Instagram and TikTok. Keep it under 90 minutes a day. That seems pretty reasonable to me. I am on the other end of the spectrum.
Well, you should. I'm happy to highlight this end of the spectrum you have. I have a 245 at 150. I got to leave at 215. Can we go to 215?
We can go to 215.
As long as we want.
Oh, we're keeping going. Okay,
We're going to
cool.
keep going.
Cool.
You know why we're keeping going? Because you are valuable for Charlottesville and Central Virginia.
I appreciate that.
Like, the community is fortunate to have you here. Like, I swear. And you know I feel that way.
I appreciate you saying that, and I do. I get affirmed every time I come on the show, and I appreciate it. And I also, I like getting affirmed by families, and recognizing that I'm just trying to be a voice, trying to hear all sides of education, and I'm just trying to provide the best experience for the students in our community.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's a guy that is a conduit of knowledge.
Yeah.
He is in the middle.
We're basically a filtration.
That's
Anything
what I'm
that's
saying.
not working in public or independent schools, we're the first to hear about it because parents come to us and say, this isn't working, we need you to help patch this. And so we actually go back to the schools and say, hey, did you know that it seems like this calculus class isn't working or this humanities class isn't working?
He's educational, he's the confessional of education. He's the priest of education in Central Virginia. You go to the priest and you hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what confession is. You're a confessional for education.
What did you call me yesterday, Judah? The canary in the coal mine of education?
The water cooler of education.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he is.
So again,
social media.
Yeah. So social media. I personally, I told you a little bit about this yesterday. I think it's dangerous to have an algorithm making decisions for me. And so I have all but removed myself from social platforms. Not that I don't have TikTok and I don't have Instagram, I just don't use them. And that's been a 5 to 6 year process to slowly remove myself from that. I don't think that that's reasonable, certainly not for
a teenager.
Yeah, for a teenager. Probably impossible because that's how they communicate with their friends. I think it's important to recognize that what essentially we're doing is we're putting our viewing habits and our consumption in the hands of companies that their only metric of success is to get you to engage more. That's how they make money. They want you to stay on for one more video,
Sticky is the
one
term.
more minute.
Sticky.
And so some of it's nefarious and some of it isn't. Again, the reports that have come out about what Facebook has known about what Instagram does to teenagers.
Especially girls.
Yeah, teenage girls. There's been other studies too. It does poor things for teenage boys as well. Teenagers just in general. I think what it highlights is that it wasn't that they nefariously went out and said, we're going to target them. It's that it happened accidentally. They put this black box and they told this algorithm, hey, just make sure that they increase engagement. What does engagement mean? It means get people to click more, and people click on bad news more. Sometimes we pick on stories. Maybe we click on conspiracy theories more because it sounds exciting, and you don't know the end result. And so I think as much as you can as an adult, trying to limit your social media, that way you can pass those practices on to your kids and students. I think that's great, and keeping that number in mind, over 90 minutes a day definitively reduces your attention span, and I can't think of many places in the world which having a reduced attention span is a good thing. You want to try to have an attention span if you need to be able to work through these problems. So with your kids, just having that discussion with them every week and looking through the phone and saying, let's look at how much this app was used every day. can we set a goal for next week? Right now, you're on it 3 hours a day. Maybe next week it's 2 hours and 45 minutes. I know most of my students, when I ask them how much they're on TikTok and Instagram, it's hours a day. How many hours a day? I mean, you're a outlier here because
That's how I make my living.
part of your industry, yeah.
There's not a single person in Charlottesville or Central Virginia. I'll make a definitive statement. There's not a single person within, how far is Richmond from here?
About an hour, 60 miles, 62
There's
miles.
not a single person within 60 miles of Charlottesville, Virginia that understands this content more than me.
Wow. That's a challenge.
Can you think of a larger, outside of the University of Virginia, influencer than what we're doing right here?
I can't. Yeah. And so I realize it's
You want to know a couple other things?
Yeah.
The content that goes viral undoubtedly is the negative content. Undoubtedly is the negative content, is the content that goes viral.
And again, if you're...
You want to know some other things?
Yeah.
If you habitually create content at the same time every single day, like the I Love CVille show at 12:30, you weave it into human behavior. You
How so?
train them. Folks become trained to to absorb. Just like watching Seinfeld at Thursday night at 9 p.m. 20 years ago when we were kids.
Not
25
anymore, right?
years ago.
It's been purchased and can't be syndicated anymore.
Now
But
it's
anyway,
on
yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay? Want to know some other things? Long form content is not the best kind of content to create.
Well,
Short form content.
best. I would argue with the term best. I would say that your show is the exception, not the rule.
Well, that's
Short-form
because of
content
the
is-
quality of the content.
Yeah, best. The metric you're using is what you get viewers to watch the most and make the most money off of, right? For advertisers, not necessarily for you.
Not necessarily true. Not necessarily true.
With the exception of YouTube, more like having
You can
more
make the
short-
most
short-
advertising dollars on short form repetitive content. A lot of 60-second clips
Yep.
is much more monetizable than we are now 90 minutes into the I Love CVille show.
Yeah, so for that reason, I respect your show because you say this a lot. It's hard to take things out of context on the show because you provide
Context.
You provide your guests with the time to be able to explain themselves and provide context. This show is the exception, not the rule, right?
thank you
There's
for saying that.
Not many that provide this sort of context.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll cut to the chase even more. There's 100%, social media is more negative for mankind than positive.
Wow, you're hearing Jerry Miller say this.
100% more negative than positive for mankind.
So tell me why don't people stop? I think people deep down know that, right?
This is drugs.
Okay.
The iPhone I'm holding in my hand is drugs. This is as addictive as abusing Adderall. Blow.
There's parents watching, so we don't even have to get into these specifics here.
What's wrong? Blow's cocaine. They know what that means. Am I not allowed to say that?
But I think that the point is taken, yeah.
This is an addiction.
Yeah, it's an addiction.
The dopamine hit that you get from someone liking your post or your Instagram is tangible and palpable. 100%. Now, here's the topic, or here's the overarching question. We know it's drugs, yet we don't stop doing it. Better yet, parents, we know it's drugs, yet we don't keep our kids from doing it. Parents, we know screen time causes damage, but we don't take our kids off of screen time. Why do we do it? You want to know why we do it? Sanity.
Yep.
Time to ourselves, parents.
Yep.
Put an iPad in front of a kid. You can be screaming next to the kid, hey, hey, and they don't even hear you.
Yeah.
They're mesmerized
I have
by
nieces
the
and
drugs.
nephews, yep.
Mesmerized by the drugs. But we, as
Peer pressure too, right? Other kids have it, right? You want your kid to be the only kid who doesn't have a screen, right?
You know what? I'll put this in perspective. I was having this conversation with a friend on a squash court. And this particular friend gave his 7th grader was going to give a 7th grader a phone for the sole purpose of the 7th grader being able to communicate with mom and dad. The phone wasn't going to have social media apps, had strict parental controls. It was strictly for the purpose of, Mom, Dad, I need a ride. You know, where are you? I'm at this place. Can you come pick me up? Sole purpose of that. That phone that was given to the 7th grader was an Android. The response that you would think from a 7th grader getting their first smartphone, we're talking like a $1,000 device here, was devastation. The reason it was devastation from the 7th grader, you know why?
Wasn't an iPhone.
It wasn't an iPhone. And the iPhone, Apple, branding, marketing, advertising campaigns, this is social currency. This is sexy. This is cool. This is
They
in
target
crowd.
youth like no other manufacturers do.
Exactly. The same way the cigarettes, Camel, the same way the booze companies, they create campaigns for kids. Joe Camel, a freaking cartoon camel was the branding mechanism for cigarettes? What the hell was that for? To target children.
So what's the, what's realistic expectations if parents,
I don't know that answer. I don't have that answer.
If this is
That's beyond
resonating
my
with you as a
purview.
parent, like I could just imagine saying, okay, well then you're asking, like if me and my child are on for 2 hours a day and you're asking us to drop that back to 90 minutes or less, let's say to 60 minutes, what do I do with that hour? Right? I mean, as an adult, I think we all know we could either be more productive or find better ways to relax. I won't say the B word. Actually, I will. Books. I think for kids, what do they do so that they don't feel like they're missing out? Is a little bit of FOMO, right? Is everything happens on social media? Hey, did you see that video that got put? Did you see this? How do you get them to understand that by being productive and disconnecting from it, they're actually doing better for their mental health and their future success?
Do any parents have that answer? I don't have that answer. That's above my pay grade.
If this is resonating with any parents and you feel like you really want to get off, I will put a link for algorithmic sovereignty on there.
I want to hear this. You taught me about this, and the obvious irony here is this conversation is being had on every social media platform known to mankind.
Right. It's like we're going to talk to you about the dangers of social media platforms on social media. Because it's not. We know it's not going away, and I know I'm a way outlier. It's really hard to remove everything. I don't have an active Instagram or TikTok. I have them, but it was like 6 months ago I was on it to check something a student sent. I don't use it actively.
I noticed you do have a Twitter account.
I was one of the first people on Twitter, yeah. I think I posted in 2011 maybe? Yeah, anyway, so...
The solution, I hate to say this, and I'm not saying this to burst your bubble, and I think you already know this. The solution is not read more books. The solution is not get the soccer ball and go play outside. And I'm not even sure the solution is mom and dad's taking the screens, the iPads and the phones and throwing them away. I don't even think that's what it is.
Yeah, because there's a difference between less screen, like there is a danger in like actual screen time, and then there's an increased danger with social media. And so maybe a first step is it's okay to still be on your screen, but absorb. Honestly, I don't see a lot wrong with long form content. Like if you're 90 minutes a day you were spending watching the I Love CVille show, I actually wouldn't, outside of screen time, I wouldn't find that to be dangerous because it actually helps with your attention span and it's not giving you that dopamine release that you find every time you flip up on a new video.
And I would think that a lot of the parents that are watching the show, and I'm seeing them in the feed, my page alone, there's 83 comments on my page alone. On I Love CVille Facebook page, there's 62. This airs on 80 social media channels all at once. Like right now, that's happening. I want to show you this. These are the metrics. I Love CVille Facebook page. You see it there, right?
Yeah.
Scroll. This is one page. I'm scrolling down. Look at the reach. Can you see how far?
Yeah.
That's one page. Can you read that to the audience? One page. The top number is the matter one.
Say 23,000?
22,153 people reached on one page alone.
Yeah. So I think, so going back to what you said, so you said you don't think the answer is pick up a book or go see a soccer ball. My solution would be start with
This
try
guy
to go
has a
through
good
more,
answer.
More long-term content. What's the answer?
Dan Carper. And when I said moms,
An answer.
when I said moms, he goes, hey, there's a dad watching here. He put that in the feed.
Okay.
Dan Carper. So that was to your point.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dan Carper said this. How about we start with not allowing the kids to use the phones in the school, period? That's a start.
110%.
That's a
agree.
solution.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you saw that in that article that was published in the Crozet Gazette. You see every teacher talk about how difficult that is. Whenever I teach during the summer, my number one rule, I have students come up with the rules. I say, would it be respectful to have everyone have their phones down so that they're all listening and engaged? And by and large, in a small classroom, I haven't had any problems getting students to agree. And then on their break, they can look at their phone. But in class, it doesn't make sense. I would say having them not have it at all at school is probably unrealistic, but certainly not during any sort of instructional period.
Right.
That,
How is this not? Can you in the private schools? Can you do that?
it's school dependent. Most of them no. There's a lot different.
So the private schools are no.
Independent schools, generally the ones in the area have a no phone policy in, and a lot of the schools, I won't say names, it's a student agreement. The students all agree to it, and if you get the students to buy into the rationale as to why you shouldn't be looking at a screen and paying attention, I mean, it's pretty obvious. You want to be truly engaged when you're in class, otherwise you're not absorbing anything. And what are you absorbing on your phone that's going to make any lasting impact in the future of your education? Probably not anything. There's probably a few students who are like, oh, I'm looking up a Wikipedia page on this.
And I want everyone to realize what we just did here. We started the show with the topic that's in the news, a heinous act at Albemarle with its football program that was captured on phones and is now going viral everywhere. And we came up with solutions. That was the springboard for a nearly now 97-minute show of
Long
how
show.
we could take the problem that is currently in the news cycle, dissect it, and potentially offer solutions to solve it. That's what we've done here. We've talked about protocols, we've talked about methodologies, we've talked about the role with parents, funding schools, teachers.
Educational pedagogy at its root there, yeah.
There you go.
And then I appreciate how you acknowledge that everything that happens with our consumption of social media, right? I think the worst thing to do is to just deny it, right? I think that's the number one thing with addiction, right? Acknowledge, like, I probably do this too much. If I did this less, I would have more one-on-one time with my kids or with my family, right? And as an adult, we recognize that. As teenagers, I don't think that they really see the value in having that one-on-one time with their family and asking them those open-ended questions like you did with your dad,
Yeah.
right?
What was the social media before social media?
Information just traveled a lot slower. By that, you had a filtration process.
You know what the social media was before social media?
No, what's that?
Face-to-face talking. Human connection in what we're doing right now.
Genuine human connection is what I say. That's what I spend my time doing. That's when people ask, like, "Oh, you're not on social media. What do you do?" I'm like, I go out in the downtown mall and I just talk to people. If you live in Charlottesville, I'd be surprised if you could walk in the downtown mall and not run into somebody you know.
100%.
We immediately shared somebody we knew today, right? When we were talking, it's like, oh, you know her too. So
Yeah. 100%.
I think it's good for human development, and I think it's also good for the soul to have that affirmation with other individuals.
You are phenomenal. I want you guys to Google Lee Elberson.
And you're going to see all the shows I've been on. The majority of my Googling is on the I Love CVille show. Jerry Miller is telling me I need to...
Did you do it?
I haven't done it yet. I'll do it.
Okay, let's not even bring it up then.
Yeah. Somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah, we should bring it up. Jared is watching right now. Jared Edwards, you're going to get a text from Lee Elberson. You want to text him right now?
You know what? I'll text him right now. Yeah.
Jared Edwards,
He'll
you're
do it for
getting
me.
a text right now from your brother-in-law?
Yep.
Yeah, brother-in-law. This was advice that I offered him yesterday. I think Jared Edwards is going to then respond to your text
I
message
bet you,
saying,
dude.
he's going to respond to your text message and say, Jerry just gave you the best advice ever.
But he'll probably also say done. Jared is one of the. When you ask him to do something, I mean, it's seconds until he does it. He's the most hardworking guy I know. I'll just say it. He's the most, and that's a lot coming from you. You and him, two hardest working people I've ever met.
I'm 70 hours a week.
Jared's at least that.
Did you text him?
Yeah. I sent him a Slack message.
All right, you send him a Slack message. All right, this is the advice I offered your brother-in-law yesterday, Jerry.
All right, how are we going to close the show?
Yeah, I do. I don't even have to offer guidance for you, man. I want you to close the show any way you want.
So,
and if you want me to give you time to think about it before you close, or you have something ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, well, I tell you what. I'll say something, then I'll turn it over to you.
Judah, don't open that door. We got the leaf blower. We pay that guy, and he always does it during the show.
Yeah, it's fine.
Despite us telling him not to do it.
Hey, but this is why you can tell the show is organic, right? It's not
Someone
staged.
called it the other day
There's
raw.
Yeah, it's raw. There's no scripts.
It's raw.
You have technical difficulties. You roll with it. That's what I love about the show. So I think in closing, what I would love to close with is look at how much time you're spending on social media a week, and just take an hour away from that and find somebody that find one or several people in your life that you really appreciate, and then share some gratitude with them. One thing that I love about Claiborne Education is we don't have a meeting that doesn't start with us just sharing things that we're grateful for. Because it's so easy to think about what's the next thing, right? You get that better job, oh, I want this. Oh, you get a new car, what's going to be the next car? Stop and realize how grateful we are to live in such a great community. Focus on the great things that your spouse has done, that your kids have done, that your friends have done, and just tell them thank you. And I think that will make our community an even better place to live. That's what I'll close with. Is that okay?
That was fantastic.
Okay.
That's fantastic. I'll close with this. My friend Lee Elberson is a tremendous asset to this community. He and his team, and he's not even a client, okay? He's not a client of ours, would be an asset to your kids and your family. Claiborne Education undoubtedly would be. You just saw 97 minutes, 112 minutes of what he's about, okay? I also want to close with this.
By the way, Jared said done.
He did? Let's check. Let me check.
I'll check. What are you closing with?
Hold on.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Domain is taken. LeeElberson.com is taken. LeeElberson.com. I would encourage you to get .org as well there, especially since he's in the educational stratosphere, Jared.
Okay.
LeeElberson.com and LeeElberson.org. ScoopUp.org real quick here, Jared. This is coming from a guy who makes his living on social media and by putting content on screens that you hold in your hands. Look, we have to realize that, especially for impressionable minds, the minds that are not developed yet, teenagers and younger, the content they're viewing is undoubtedly desensitizing them to the world. Judah mentioned this earlier this week. It is now easier than ever for teenagers and younger to see gruesome, violent acts that people would never even conceive of. Now, anything that you may or may not be able to conceive of is available on this device. So the desensitization, help me with that word?
Desensitization.
Desensitization. The fact that folks are immune to violence is clearly happening.
And it can happen accidentally, right? Kids don't necessarily actively go out to this. They can accidentally click on something not knowing what it is, right? They're curious.
My kid was watching Turbo Toy Time on YouTube,
Yep,
and
on
30
Avengers.
seconds later, he was watching Avengers. And all I did was go take the dog out and put him in the backyard and came back up. So this is what I'm going to close with. Maybe what we saw with innocent bystanders recording the crime that was committed in the locker room is a byproduct of us becoming less empathetic because of the violence we're seeing on our phones. Don't take for granted that a 13 or 14-year-old seeing violence on their phones will then shape their human behavior because it's happening. And this is coming from someone who literally monetizes content for a living on social media. So please, watch what your kids are watching. And I'm going to say this. Any of the social media apps where the content is disappearing should scare the hell out of you. Because the reason the platforms are being used is the clandestine nature of those platforms. Keeping things hidden from you as parents. That's the show. Lee Elberson, Judah Wickhauer, Jerry Miller, the I Love CVille show on a Friday. So long, everybody.
Adios.
Killed it.
Dude, my man. Always, right?
That was great.
Was that fun?
Good. Was it not?
Yeah.
It was so good.
Dude, I love seriously the open form contact, and I was being serious. Like, if this is what people are doing, spending social media watching long form content, I don't honestly see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, because they stay sticky. It doesn't impact their attention. That was a good point by you.
Yeah.
That was a genuine good point. Like, I hadn't even thought about that. We're going to do a photo because you're looking sharp.
Let's do it, man.
We should get that.
Dude, I love how you pulled the jacket off, man. You were all that. Yeah. I knew you were gonna. I love how you think about, because I do hear a lot of like, well, just increase the budget, and you're right. It's like, in theory, it sounds good, but like, how's that going to affect